Hello everyone. Uh, in this lecture, we will talk about one of the very basic questions that confronts a student of literature. That what, in fact, is literature? This seems to be a very basic question, a very simple question, but it is rather difficult to answer this because literature is many things, and therefore any watertight definition of literature has to take into account all the diverse forms, all these diverse art forms that constitute literature. Now, first things first, where has this word literature come from? This word has its Latin roots. That means it has been derived from a Latin word which is litera. It means letters or writing. So, the root of this term leads us to believe that anything that is written can be termed as literature. But is it that simple? Can folk traditions, can oral traditions not be regarded as literature? Or can things which have not been put into black and white, can they not be subjects of literature? These are some of the intriguing questions that lead us to doubt this rather simple definition that anything that is in writing forms a part of literature. Now, second, if you look at the historical perspective of literature as a thing which is taught in curriculum, we'll find that the way in which we see literature today was not the manner in which literature was taught from the earlier times. This method of taking up a work of art, taking up a poem or a novel, and trying to understand its content and trying to understand its social significance, etc. This trend came into being rather late. That is in the uh, maybe 18th century, and it has since continued. But before that, all these works, uh, which we regard as literature today, were not read as social documents. They were not read in relation to the socio-political situation in which they were written. They were in fact judged as uh, examples of very good expression and examples of very good writing, and students used to read those poems, uh, mainly poems, to understand how well a thought can be expressed. So this type of literary study, this type of formalized study of literature did not happen in the earlier times, and it is a rather late development. That is, it started around the 18th century and it has since continued. So then we come back to our question as to what is literature, how do we define literature. Now, here it is very important for us to note that from time immemorial, we have regarded poetry as literature. We have regarded drama as literature. Uh, then you'd be surprised to know that when novels were first written, they were not regarded as high literature. they were regarded as low literature, but gradually they got more acceptance as literature, and in the 20th century, novel became a full-fledged form of literature, and it was studied as a formal part of literature. So, we see that what we understand as literature has also evolved over time. That means first poetry was considered as literature, and then drama was considered as literature. After that, novel was also considered as part of literature. And then in modern times, we have things like film studies, which are included in the curriculum of literature. We have things like cultural studies, which have been included in the curriculum of literature. So we have critical theories and all those things, interdisciplinary theories that we read as literature. So uh, we see that what we have regarded as literature has continuously undergone a change. So it is safe for us to believe that what we consider as literature is dynamic. There is very little unique in all those things which we regard as literature. For example, take poetry. We have poetry of various types. We have narrative poetry like epic. We have short musical poetry like lyric. We have odes. We have ballads. Then we also have poems which don't rhyme at all. Those poems are written in free verse. We have other poems uh, which are very short and which are almost like prose. We have poems like haiku, which are very, very short poems. So, even in one genre of poetry, we have different forms. We have novels, we have novella, we have short stories, we have drama. In drama, we have prose dramas, we have verse drama, we have drama written both in verse and prose. In novels, we have prose novels, we have verse novels. So there is a lot of fluidity in the art forms in which we count as literature. So it is important to see what is the basic quality which makes us to regard a thing as literature, regard a text as literature. So, the first thing that we all agree on is that literature is made up of language, and the language may be spoken, the language may be written, and literature contains some message which is encoded in that language. But then we have various other examples also. For example, if we read a book of physics, it is also written in English. And if we read a book of English literature, for example, if you read a novel by Charles Dickens, Hard Times, for example, it is also written in English. So, what is the difference between the text which is written in a physics book and the text which is written in a novel? It is the language is English, but then there must be some difference. That is why we treat one thing as a scientific text and the other thing as literature. So that thing is literariness. Literariness is the quality that makes a work literature. Now, the question is shifted. What is literariness? So, literariness constitutes many things, but one of them is a special use of language. That means if language is used in a special manner, it becomes, uh, you may say, unfamiliar. And in technical terms, we can call it uh, defamiliarized. So, when a language becomes defamiliarized, when it is used in a particular way which invites special attention from the readers, that becomes a literary quality. That means the text has a quality of literariness. I'll give you an example. For instance, take uh, a popular dance move, the moonwalk. The moonwalk is a walk which is done in a special manner and it becomes a dance move. While it is important for us to understand the difference between the two, the very nature of the movement remains almost the same. But a walk and a moonwalk are different because a walk is done differently and it becomes a moonwalk. That is a dance form. So a walk and a dance are almost the same, but the only difference is that a dance is done in a special way. So this is the difference between a normal text and a literary text. In a literary text, language is used in a special way. So this is the first quality that we would use to identify what will be treated as literature. But then this language-based definition uh, will not serve the complete purpose because yes, language is used in various other things. For example, in an ad jingle, for example, take this jingle, "Fena hi lena." Here we have rhyming, but can this be regarded as literature? So here again the question comes, do we see it as poetry? We don't. There is some minor versification which many people regard as just lowbrow poetry, and it is not regarded as high literature at all. So our standards vary. So here we would again uh, try to focus on the question that who decides what is literature? Who decides what is literature? The question can be people sitting in the uh, uh, board of universities, academic councils. They decide what is literature because they decide what is the syllabus. They decide what is the canon. They decide what is to be treated as literature and what is not to be treated as literature. If I simplify this fact to you, the thing is, whatever a society treats as literature becomes literature. For example, 50 years ago, Indian English literature was not a part of the curriculum in most of Indian universities, and it was not regarded as that influential an art form. But now, Indian English literature is one of the major components of syllabus in almost all the universities. That has become a part of high literature and a pretty mainstream part of high literature. So, the role of society, the role of people who decide what is to be treated as literature is very, very important. So, now we see that art forms like cultural studies, here we study even um, ad jingles and understand how they impact the people. It has led to a lot of democratization of literature also. So we see that literature is a dynamic thing. What constitutes literature keeps on changing, but we can identify at least two aspects with the help of which we can identify what is literature. First is the use of language, and second is the attitude of the society towards it. In other words, the content and the social context. These two combine to make a work of art or a text or just a discourse be treated as literature. So I hope I have made sense to you, and if you like this video, please subscribe to my channel, and see you soon in our next lecture. Thank you.